Good morning. I'm going to call this Council Committee of the Whole to order, and Addie, please take roll.
Cobb. Petrus. Larson.
Here.
Maddox.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
Posh.
Osh is here.
Sheets.
Here. And Councilor Petrus is on his way. Thank you. I would like to ask the opinion of the people that are presenting to us today, if it's acceptable as we go through all this information, that council ask their questions as we go through it rather than waiting until a stopping point.
Yes, please do.
All right. So that being said, I'm going to let you take it over.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I would like to make a few opening remarks. I know we have an hour set aside here. This is not going to be an hour, but thank you for being here. And I guess I'll just get to it. I think, as all of you know, one of my 4 goals as interim mayor was to get a budget in place by November 1st, and that's mandated by an ordinance that the council passed earlier this year. And to that end, you all received an 85-page budget book on October 31st, which was 30 days after I took office. And as you all know, this process usually takes months, not weeks. And I say all this because I really want to give credit to the staff for pulling this together in such a short time. I want to express gratitude to all the directors and chiefs and all their supporting staff for moving so quickly and being so cooperative and collaborative with the finance staff and the city administrator. I want to especially thank Interim Finance Director Rayshawn Caldwell for stepping into her role and so competently handling her new duties. I want to single out the work of former Finance Director Andy Unetic, who came back to put the budget book together. Andy, you hit the ground running, as I knew you would, and once again came through when we really needed you. And of course, there's our city administrator, Sharon Dumas, who knew what to do and how to do it. She just rolled up her sleeves and simply coordinated the whole thing. No big deal, right? No big deal. That's what experience does. I'm assuming you all read the budget book and read my letter. I'm not going to read the letter, but I'm going to read the clear set of goals that I put forward and just reiterate a few parts. So as a clear set of priorities, what has guided me in putting this budget book together is delivering high quality public services efficiently and equitably, maintaining and improving essential infrastructure and facilities, supporting community development and economic opportunity, and advancing our commitment to the safety of our residents. Now, there's always more to it than that, but you always have to have these guiding principles. I did also ask each director in chief to use as part of their rationale, looking at the data from Todd Walburn, our Mayor's Action Center coordinator, and using it as criterion for creating their budget. And by that, I mean, if you got, 500 complaints about leaf pickup, late leaf pickup, or, and I shouldn't always say, I feel like I always pick on Public Works, and I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just saying that we do this Mayor's Action Center, and we have this as a kind of an ombudsman type purpose that should help drive what we do and make adjustments. And I did ask our staff to do that. I felt the interaction with our residents should be a key driver in adjusting our budget to match their needs. But at the end of the day, and you can tell how written this is, this part, it is you, City Council, who get to decide. You are the budget authority. You have priorities, just as I and our city staff do. And I'm confident that those priorities overlap. However, I welcome the scrutiny that is necessary for any productive collaboration. And because the staff was able to produce this budget in a timely manner, we have the time to work together and co-create the best budget possible for our community. And with that, I'll turn it over to, would you like to speak first? Okay. Okay. I'll turn it over to Andy Unetic.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Today, we're just going to do a general summary of the budget.
then we'll dive in a little bit deeper with the departments. Please feel free to jump in with any questions. Okay? Yes, Sean?
Okay.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rayshawn Caldwell, as the mayor mentioned earlier. I'm the interim finance director. It's a pleasure and privilege to sit before the residents, administration, and members of council today. As Andy mentioned, he and I will be going through the 2026 proposed budget. So to kick things off on the revenue side, we budgeted $111 million, which is up $11 million or 11% over the 2025 budget. The largest drivers behind the 11% increase is property taxes, municipal income taxes, interest earnings, and grant revenue. Also on this slide, I did want to note that the general fund is expected to increase by 5% year over year, which we'll see a little bit more detail for later in the presentation. This next slide is the 2026 total budget revenue comparison slide. It shows a breakout of our revenues by revenue classification. Of note, for property taxes, we're reflecting a $735,000 increase for property taxes, which is up from the 2025 budget. This is based on estimates provided by the county, which include the new property valuations. For municipal income taxes, we're up $753,000 or a little over 2%, which is in line with projections received by RETA. Our grant revenues are expected to be up $7 million or 62.45%, as we have several projects in the hopper that will be receiving grant dollars. Last but not least, interest earnings are up. This is based on year-end projections and some historical projections and estimates from the city's investment advisor. One item of note on this particular slide, for which we see a decrease, is the other local tax category, and that's due to a decrease in our franchise tax revenues.
One question for you. The interest that we're earning has been high the last few years because of the ARPA funds.
Yes.
So would you expect that this interest earned will start to diminish?
Yes,
as soon as next year or in 2027?
So the ARPA dollars, from my understanding, has to be spent down by 2026. So we should see a decrease definitely by 27 in that category.
All right, thank you.
So this is obviously a very complete package that you provided for us, and I thanked you off mic before we were online and everything. I just want to state for the record that you guys did a great job putting together this budget book for us.
Thank you.
I almost cried when it came in, just knowing all the crazy stuff that happened last year. 16 or 18 pages versus 80, it gives us a lot more detail. So I want to thank everybody for that to start with. The 11% revenue increase really is kind of a big jump. Is there any way that you can provide some kind of actual information to us that can just help justify that? Not that I'm saying it's not believable, because I do believe it is. If there's just something, I mean, maybe some actuals, and you have given us actual financial statements through the end of, I believe, September. It'd be helpful if you can just on the revenue piece, across all funds, if you can just provide something to us in the next couple of days, or sometime during these hearings.
And we could definitely do that. And I want to point out the intergovernmental revenues, they're going up $7 million in 2026. And those are based on actual grants that the city knows we're bringing in. So that's a good part of that $11 million. The grants are going to increase by $7 million. So that's, of the 11 million, 7 million is because of the grants. But we could give you support for that.
And that's one-time monies?
Not necessarily. The grants could be over, they go over a certain amount of periods of time. It's not just 1 year. CDBG, we always get CDBG, just how much money is available.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Any other questions on the revenue?
We're good.
All right, next, I'm going to discuss the total budgeted expenses. This is for all funds. The total 26 budget is going to be approximately 122 million. This is a 9% increase from the 2025 amended budget. The reasons for the increase, we're going to have increased personnel expenses. We have contractually obligated wages that we have to pay. Hospitalization and workers' comp is going up. And then the administration is requesting a few new employees for some departments. We're also asking for increased capital expenses. We're asking for about 23 million in capital in 2026. This is almost a 50% increase from 2025. We'll get into our capital request upcoming. A lot of our capital, though, has offsetting revenues. The general fund is really only going to pay for a little bit over $5.5 million of the capital expenses. A lot of the other capital expenses have offsetting revenues. This chart shows the total budget expense comparison for 2026 compared to the amended budget for 2025. Personnel services for 2026 is going to be approximately $65 million. This is $4.5 million increase from 2025. The reason for this increase, again, we have contractually obligated wages that we have to pay for increases. Hospitalization and workers' comp is going up. And then we also are requesting a few new employees, which we will get into in a little bit. The operating expenses for the total city is going to be approximately 34 million. This is slightly down from 2025. We were able to cut some operating costs in 2026, so that's always good when we could reduce our operating expenses a little bit. Again, the capital is going to be 23.5 million. That's our request. This is up almost 8 million from 2025. We will get into these requests, but in 2025, there's still a lot of ARPA funds that are being spent. So we didn't have all the capital because we still have projects that are being done in 2025 and they have to be completed by 26. Total budget for 2026 is just over 122 million. Again, this is an increase of 10.5 or 9%.
Mr. Yannetti.
10.5 million, sorry.
Thank you. You are including from my understanding at our meeting last week that Leopardo debt reduction is included for this year and then a reservation for another year of debt.
Right. So the Leopardo, it's not actually a reduction, it's an increase. We have $1.5 million in expenses coming out in 2026 that we're going to have to pay for the Leopardo project. That is factored in this number, in this budget.
Thank you.
Question. Hello?
Davida has her hand up.
Vice President Russell.
Yes, I just have a question. You're talking about the capital expenditures. How much of that 23 million capital is grant dependent versus city cash?
So city cash is going to pay for just under 600,000 or just under 6 million. And then there's grants and offsetting revenues for all the other capital expenses.
Thank you.
Councilor Posh.
So I've got a couple of things. So the Leopardo, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. I was under the impression when we signed that agreement that the monies for all that work was coming from energy savings. That was basically financed over, I believe, 30 some years, I believe. So these payments that we need to make, will there be some reimbursement later for them? Is this new money? Is it just maybe a misunderstanding on my side in the contract? I mean, we may not have the right people in the room to answer that. And I'm okay if we get the answer some other time.
Councilman, from our understanding, and we took the Leopardo agreement, which is that thick, to try to understand what the response was. We did see savings in the agreement, but they were over, as you said, 7, 10-year, 20-year period. Currently, you have a line of special equipment that's about 17.5 million. About 14.4 has been expended. The law department is in process of reviewing that activity and also reviewing what you said, looking at the agreement. They're bringing in someone to do it, looking at the agreement to see if there was some reported savings or like a cash refund or a payment if in fact you didn't meet those savings. That is rare in a first year of an energy agreement. So the debt service starts this year in 2026, and it's about 1.7 million. As Andy said, we bake that in. We also set up a reserve for 2 years additional payments while council and the city works their way through the agreement and what the return should be from the agreement. So we've set up 3 years payment, 1 due and then 2 in a reserve. And those payments are about $1.2 million a year.
We have 1.7 now and then 2 1.2s.
That is correct.
Okay.
Will you be establishing a fund so we'll be able to clearly see that that reserve has been established?
Andy?
The city has a budget stabilization fund, and that's where we are setting aside, there's money in there, and then we also have the debt service fund.
Okay.
And we're going to supplement the debt service fund to pay for additional Leopardo debt payments.
Okay. Thank you.
I have some additional thoughts. So one of the things that, last year was the first time I looked at any city budgets, but we went back a couple years. And when we see these tables that show personnel expenses last year, it didn't include hospitalization, which is a huge number. It's coming out of a different fund. Is this, when we're presented with these numbers by departments for this round of budget for 2026, do the personnel services actually include hospitalization, or is that separate?
No, it includes hospitalization, all benefits, wages, that's all in there.
Okay, and it's about an $8 million, just looking at the fund line. Our self-insurance hospitalization is about, it's going up to about $10 million.
Correct.
From 8.
Exactly.
Has the city ever had a healthcare committee to look at our hospitalization plan, how it's performing, how we can make tweaks to it? We did this at the school district level, and you'd have members of our bargaining groups, you'd have staff, you'd have experts that would come in that would sort of look at how our healthcare is being spent. We were always able to squeeze savings out of these. Use an example. We have families that would go to emergency rooms if they have a routine cold, where it makes more sense to go to like an urgent care center, but you'd put incentives in to make sure that they would do that. And this is, I mean, that's just a real simple, easy example. But the district was able to squeeze out, millions of dollars worth of savings. Now, granted, they have a bigger base of employees, but is that something that cities do? Is it something that should be considered on a long-term basis? Would a department do that? Can it be put on someone's work plan for this coming year?
In my previous places, we have had a healthcare committee. I do think they're very beneficial. For the city, I know we are going to be looking at renegotiating our current contract for our hospitalization, and that's going to be coming up in the near future.
So we currently, to the councilman, have a broker that entered into an agreement with the city. Andy, 3 years, the broker? I think about 3 years. So it's in the second year of his agreement. So the things that you described is what's going to happen during this current negotiation. I think we're set up for him in about a week or two.
Yes.
He's going to be coming in and he will be presenting kind of our statistics for use, the demographics of the group you're insuring, how much it costs, if you have chronic diseases, what percent and all that. So you can look at the coverage and try to determine where there can be some reduction. Mayor and I had a conversation around the possibilities of duplicate coverage. Like if you have a husband and wife, the wife may have coverage at another, or the husband may. So we're going to entertain some of that and try to bring the costs down. But and as Andy said, a healthcare committee would not be harmful. It could be helpful, but we do have those conversations with the broker.
I'd like to add something, Madam President. Is that okay? In the bigger picture, Councilman, when Joe Seymour and I were working on the letter that was going to be used by the HR department to get a quality HR director into Cleveland Heights, that was one of the things that we stressed on the application, on the job description, sorry, that somebody very familiar with benefits, and specifically healthcare benefits. I know how much money the school district has saved due to the last contract. It's astronomical. And, it's very important for the city, and I'm going to talk specifically to the mayor-elect about this. It's very important that you get a hold of what is 40% of compensation. And I think we can do that. I think the HR department can play a very big role in getting those costs under control.
Madam President?
Yes, go ahead, Vice President Russell.
Yes, to Councilman Posh's point, I spoke about this at the last meeting. Had you also looked at a consortium around with municipalities? I know school districts also do that, along with having a healthcare committee as well. Or does municipalities even work in a course in that way?
Madam Chair, to the Councilwoman, looking at a consortium is absolutely part of this whole examination. The downside, or the side you have to be careful of, is kind of who you're going into the consortium with, because if
Correct.
you have a predominantly well organization and they have like a little more illnesses.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood.
And so we have to be
Understood.
careful with that, but it is part of the examination.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Now we want to go over some budget items of emphasis for 2026. We are going to be moving the building and maintenance division from Parks and Rec, and we're going to move it into the Department of Public Works. So we will be moving 9 employees from the Parks and Rec department, and they're going to go into the Department of Public Works. Plus, we're going to be adding 1 new additional employee with this to supervise these 9 employees. Also, we will be moving $1.3 million operating expense budget out of the Department of Parks and Rec and into the Department of Public Works.
Can we go back to item number 1 here? Sure. I'm on page 24 of the budget book.
Okay.
And there's 3, I just wanted to sort of like confirm this. Okay, so there's an increase of about 10 people in Department of Public Works and a decrease of approximately 10 people in Parks and Rec on page 24. So what you're referring to in item number 1 is the movement of those people, and that is reflected.
Yes, and we'll be going over the slide and coming up, but
Okay.
that's exactly what we're talking about. We're taking 9 employees out of Parks and Rec, putting 9 employees into the Department of Public Works, and then we're going to add 1 additional employee into the Department of Public Works to supervise the 9 additional employees that are coming in. So the 9 employees is not going to have any effect on the budget. We're just moving it from one department to the other. The only effect on the budget is the 1 additional supervisor that we're requesting for this. Okay?
The question, Madam President.
Any
Commissioner
questions?
Speak.
Counselor Sheets, do you have a question?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
How does the staffing adjustments from Parks and Recreation to Public Works improve the service delivery?
Okay. Madam Chair, to the Councilwoman, as part of the operations discussion, the Parks and Recs Division made a request that they no longer be responsible for building maintenance and upkeep. They wanted to concentrate more on Parks and Recs in terms of service delivery. And we believed internally that moving this over to Public Works would produce, as you said, a better service level for the maintenance and upkeep of city-owned facilities.
If I could
It
add,
was two-part. One, there was a request on the part of the Director of Parks and Recs to move this. And two, we believed it to be, would be more efficient service delivery. And we discussed it with the Director of Public Works, and she was willing to take this on.
Councilor Maddox?
just to add to that, it's actually where it was. When I worked for the city, they were actually combined. It was a bad decision in the first place to remove those, but operationally, that division works more with the other department anyway. So it's going back to the way that it was. And it was actually a division called Public Properties. And so they were connected together. And so this actually puts it back the way it had been for the vast majority of the city's operations, which is a great idea, by the way. It was a horrible idea to separate that out, those two entities, because they are always doing the same work anyway and intertwined. And so it was very difficult between the equipment, how they're set up, where they're stationed at. And so this makes a lot more sense. Plus the specializations over at Parks and Rec is completely different night and day than the folks who are doing that work over on the property side.
So for just a little bit of clarification, so janitorial services, for example, was part of Parks and Rec, like in this building, and now that's all going to be handled by,
That's correct.
and mowing of the medians was done in Public Works, and like Cumberland Pool, that was having a lot of trouble last year getting their grass cut, that's now under one.
So let me interject here. It is possible, and this is going to have to be worked out once the superintendent of public properties is hired. There are some things and equipment that Parks and Rec has that may be suited better to keep, like the lawn mowing equipment. We certainly don't want to duplicate or take away equipment that Parks and Rec needs. So there may be, let's just say this is 100%. Maybe Public Works is doing 90% of what Parks and Rec was doing on public properties, but there may be some utility. I'm not saying it's been decided, and I'm certainly going to listen to the directors as they talk about it. I'm sure the interim mayor will do the same. But for the most part, it will be moved over to Public Works.
Councilor Maddox?
Just for historical knowledge, if it helps, what happened prior is we were scheduled to do all of the parks, all of the medians. Public Properties did all of our public parking lots. And so we were on a rotational schedule, and we would let the parks know when we were going in to cut that. If there was an event or a special, something happening at Kane Park, they would call in the division to come and do a special cut on that day. But all of that equipment stayed with them, but there was constant communication with the parks. But the parks knew the schedule that was Parks and Rec knew the schedule that everything was getting cut, but that equipment housed with that. The other reason they were able to do that, and this is something that, if I recall, hasn't happened in a couple of years, and maybe city administrator can tell me if that's incorrect, but we used a summer crew to help do that cutting throughout there. And so we did a temp crew that was overseen by Public Properties as well in the summer to help keep up with that, to keep that rotation. And they worked typically from April, and they would stay in through about October. Sometimes help with the leaf pickup. So it's possible that they'll just end up doing that. But the city does historically have a plan already for that cut radius around all of the public properties and internal to the parks.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I think that was my question. I was just trying to find out what measurable outcomes the residents could expect from the changes, in regards to the parks and other safety. But thank you.
Okay, next we want to point out Kane Park operating deficit. In 2025, Kane Park will be operating at a deficit. Right now, the unencumbered fund balance as of September 30th is about 121,000 negative. And then Kane Park will have to be supplemented additional monies in 2026 to pay for the budget deficit in 2026 as well. We'll get into these more when the department is here.
Mr. Yannetic, it does reflect on page 22 that the deficit, the budget surplus / deficit is 628,299. So can you explain what that figure?
Right, so we get with the departments and they give us their estimated revenues for 2026. And then we vet those numbers out to see how realistic they are. And we go back and forth and we come up with a budgeted revenue number that we think is realistic and conservative. And we came up with just over $2 million for budgeted revenues for 2026 for Kane Park. And then Kane Park, it's my understanding they're going to be doing more shows in 2026, maybe 8 to 10. I don't know exactly how many more shows, but we'll have to ask the departments. And they said with the increased shows, they are going to need almost $2.7 million to operate Kane Park in 2026. And yes, currently that is a budget deficit of $628,000 in 2026.
So do you have and perhaps this should be asked when we do the department, and if that's the case, just let me know, why there was an over $100,000 deficit for 2025?
I think we'll have to take that up with the department.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
President?
Councilor Posh.
So I'm on page 17. I know we're not going to talk about Parks and Rec and Kane Park today, but can I ask a question so we can get an answer when we're meeting with Kane Park about the vast difference between the budget expenditures and Fund 215, which is the Kane Park operating, going from 1.8 million to 2.6?
Sure, and the short answer again is I know they're doing increased shows. So obviously you do increased shows, you have increased costs, the budget's gonna go up. But yes, you could ask that of the department head.
Yeah, I mean, if it could just funnel down to whoever's going to be making that presentation. I mean, this council has asked a number of times to get a good, I'd call it a profit and loss statement. Maybe there's a better word for it, but essentially a side-by-side revenue versus expense analysis of what's going on with Kane Park for this past year. We know we're a city and we know that we subsidize things. There was a lot of pushback to even question that at one point. But I mean, I think we have to realize really, how much money is coming out of our, how much are we subsidizing Kane Park in order to provide the level of service there? And I know there has to be some subsidy,
right?
But we really have not had. We've asked for that number in the past, and we just haven't had it. It would be very helpful to have that this time around.
Any other questions? Because we do need to move along, so.
And just so you know, I did ask Director Gonzalez to be prepared for that exact question.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
And then the last thing we want to point out in the 26 budget is the ARPA fund unencumbered balance. This is Fund 241. It's called the Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, but it is the ARPA fund. At the end of 24, the unencumbered balance in this fund was approximately $492,000, which is in line with basically where it should be. All the money had to be encumbered by the end of 24 and spent by the end of 26. But when we look at the September 30th, 2025 fund balance report, it is showing an unencumbered balance of $10.5 million. So it appears it was encumbered properly at the end of 24, and then when they rolled 24 onto 25, maybe the purchase orders didn't roll properly, or they didn't, the correct button wasn't hit. So we are going to do an audit of this and get you guys an accurate figure for that.
Thank you, because theoretically, there should not be any unencumbered ARPA funds.
I agree. And I believe the 492, I thought there was a reason for the 492, but obviously there should not be $10.5 million unencumbered there. So we think it's more a clerical thing, but we're going to look into that for you guys.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to do an overview of the general fund budget.
I'm sorry, Council President?
Vice President Russell, go ahead.
Yes, I just have a question with the ARPA funds. Once the ARPA funds are totally depleted, and what is the revenue replacement strategy for the lost interest earned?
Am I on?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, to the councilwoman, interest earned from the volume of the ARPA funds, which you know was significant, cannot be replaced by income coming into the city. So the way that there won't be a revenue replacement for interest, because you'd have to have a principal that's large enough to earn that interest. And once the ARPA funds are expended, you're not going to have that size principal. But the interest earned is a smaller dimension of revenue for the entire operating budget.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, for the 26 general fund budget, the general fund budget revenues are expected to be $62.3 million. This is an increase of 5% from 2025. We expect the muni income tax revenues to increase by approximately 3%. And we'll go into a little more detail in this next. And then the budget expenses are expected to be $62.2 million in the general fund, and that's an increase of 3% from 2025. And also at the end of 2025, the general fund will be transferring out money to other funds to make other funds more solvent, to pay for future expenses, and to pay for 2026 capital expenses.
Okay.
And that should be all line itemed.
Vice President
Question.
Russell?
Yes. Well, we have another bump in property taxes coming. And do we have a list of any delinquent property taxes within our city?
I'll do that. All right, Andy. Okay, to the councilwoman, I'm on, right?
Yes.
Okay. Property taxes are assessed and collected by the county. So they keep all of the rosters as to, what's delinquent and how, and their collection strategy. So it's not a function of the local government to collect property taxes. It's actually a levy at the county level, and then it gets sent back to us. Can we receive a listing of properties that are delinquent in the city of Cleveland Heights? Yes, we can make that request to the county, but we don't have any local authority for the collection of same. I believe that if they intend to lien properties, they do reach out to the leadership of that city to say, we're going to lien these properties so that you can work in conjunction with them, or we can say, give our opinion as to whether or not it needs to be a lien or make some kind of a collection agreement. They will do that, but it's their levy, their collection, and they share a proportionate share back to the city.
Yes, I understand that, but I think my question was, do you anticipate another property tax bump for us in 2026?
Go on, you do it. Go on.
No, so in looking at the property taxes, this is the first year of the implementation for the sexennial appraisal. And so based on the trends year to date, we feel like moving forward, it will be consistent with this year's projections or year-end projections. So we do not anticipate, unless there is another reappraisal, for the property taxes to go up.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I understand at one of the mayor's meeting, they gave a list of property taxes that were delinquent. So if anyone can get that information and share it with council, would be very appreciative.
Madam Vice President, you're correct. The county treasurer did come to a first suburbs meeting and give us all a list. It was at the beginning of the year for last year. And I will tell you, it was a large, I don't remember the number. I will get you that number. It was significant.
Thank you.
And somewhat shocking, actually. But I can get that.
Thank you.
Counselor Posh.
So there's the property tax collection rate, which is something that we looked at the school district. And, when I first got on, it was like 92%, and then it increased to 96%, which means you had more revenue come in. Can you just, I think that number is readily available. If it is, if it's easy to get, would you be kind enough to share that with us? If it's really hard to discover, I'd say no. And I also have another thought, and I've always been bothered by how the general fund, in my opinion, does not include some basic operational things that you see in the funds. Like, for example, there's a tree fund, a forestry fund. It seems to me you would create these individual funds for like special projects, monies would come and go, but the general fund is used for just everything that you'd expect that the city would be doing. But there's a couple things I noticed last year, and I'll use tree as an example. shouldn't that be in the general fund? Because it would make more sense. This is sort of like the general operations of the city, and that's kind of what you'd want to compare. Should there be some kind of consolidation of some of these funds into the general fund?
We break it out that way because the tree fund does receive some revenues, and we want that money to be spent specifically on trees. So that's why it's in a separate standalone fund.
Okay.
I have another question.
Vice President
Sorry.
Russell.
Yes, Director Unetic, this is just maybe some information. I know that the city of Cleveland Heights have $103,969.22 of NOPAC funds that's earmarked to Cleveland Heights. Could you all look into that to see if we can get those funds to within Cleveland Heights as well?
Are you referring to the budget book, or you're referring to the budget book?
I'm just giving you some information, and I don't know if you are aware of it, that Cleveland Heights has, with NOPAC, have $103,969.22 sitting in a fund earmarked to Cleveland Heights. I just want to make sure we're able to get those funds.
Yes, we actually do have those funds. We just have to draw down on those, and we'll be making a drawdown here shortly. So that's from the 2023 carryover. And then we also have some funds that were awarded for 24 and 25.
Okay, thank you. I was just aware of that, and I just wanted to make sure we obtain those funds.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, next, we'll go over the general fund revenues for 2026.
Okay, the general fund revenue variance explanations are in line with the overall budget for all funds, in that property taxes are up in the overall budget for all funds, and that remains here. And the general fund property taxes are up $287,000 or 2.69%. Municipal income tax is entirely allocated to the general fund. Again, that's up $753,000 or a little over 2%. And the general fund grant revenues are up $420,000 and interest earnings up $1.1 million.
Okay.
And this last slide reflects the makeup of our general fund revenues. As you can see, municipal income tax revenues make up the largest share of general fund revenues at 60.2%. Property taxes make up the second largest share at approximately 18%. This year, interest earnings make up the third largest share at 6.7%, followed by fees, licenses, permits, and also state levied share taxes respectively at 3.7 and 3.5%.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to go over the general fund expenses for 2026. Total general fund expenses are going to be approximately $62 million. This is an increase of $1.6 million from the amended budget of 2025, or almost 3% increase. Personnel services is going to be just under $46 million. This is an increase of $2.5 million, or 6%. The reason for the increase, again, we have hospitalization costs, workers' comp, a few additional employees, and then we have obligated wages increases that we have to pay. The operating expenses in the general fund is just going to be under $16 million. This is slightly down from 2025, so anytime we could reduce our operating expenses, especially in the general fund, that's always a good sign. Our capital in the general fund is going to be just over $215,000. Now, this is capital expenses coming directly out of the general fund, but the overall expenses for the city are going to be going up, and we'll be getting into the capital expenses later. And then lastly, the operating transfers out, we're not going to budget for any in 2026 right now. As we previously mentioned, we're going to be transferring money out at the end of 2025 to pay for future capital, fund some funds that aren't financially as solvent as they should be, and to pay for future expenses.
Okay. Vice President Russell, you have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted. Could we get a list of the 2024, 2025 capital items which were budgeted and not actually executed, and where those funds or dollars rolled over to?
Yes, we could get that. And we are also going to be auditing the 25 capital expenses, what was budgeted, what was spent, what's still out there. So we will be doing an audit of that once we get through the budget process.
Thank you.
This just shows where the general fund monies are going to be spent. Personnel services make up 74% of the general fund budget. That's normal. That's in line with basically every surrounding community. The operating expenses would count for about 26%. And then we have a very small portion of capital, but then there will be other funds that will be paying for capital expenses in 2026.
It's good to hear that this is normal. Thank you.
Yes. This chart goes over the full-time budgeted employees. It shows 23, 24, what was budgeted in 25, and then what we're requesting in 2026. Council's number is staying the same, 8 employees, but this is just full-time employees. Council has requested a part-time employee for the clerk of council, and we have already put that position in the budget.
Thank you.
The mayor's office, they're going from 7 employees to 5 employees. And the reason is we're taking the Mayor's Action Committee person, I think is that the Mayor's
Action Center.
Coordinator? Okay, sorry. We're taking that position and we're taking the sustainability person. We're taking those 2 employees out of the mayor's office and we're moving them to somebody else's department. This has no effect budgetarily on the city. We're just switching where they're located and who they report to. IT, they originally asked for no new employees, and they currently have 4. They originally asked for no new employees, but since we've had discussions, IT is asking for some big capital projects. One of them is a new ERP system for the accounting software. I think everybody's aware of that. We need some work with that. And so we are going to be adding 1 additional IT employee, or we're requesting 1 additional employee for the IT, but we will be just moving that from another department. So basically, we are asking for one new employee, but we're also going to subtract out an employee from another department.
Councilwoman Larson.
Go ahead, Counselor Petrus.
Out of curiosity, is that someone who would lead the implementation of the new software? Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe the IT director would still lead the implementation, but this new person would help oversee it. But you could ask that of the IT director.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In the finance department, currently we have 11 employees, and this includes the HR department as well. Finance and HR are all under the same umbrella. We are asking for one new employee for an HR director to oversee the HR department.
Thank you.
Okay, community relations, they currently have 7 employees. On here it says 9. Actually, that number is going to be 8 after we've had further discussions. And the reason for 8 is we are moving the mayor's action person from the mayor's office into community relations. So again, we're just shifting the person where they report. It's really not a change of budget. Law department has 7. They are not requesting anything new. Planning, they currently have 38. They're going to 40, or we're requesting they go to 40. One is an employee who's currently on the city's books. That's the sustainability employee who's currently in the mayor's office. We're gonna move him to the planning department. And then also the sustainability coordinator is asking for an additional employee to help them implement their projects. DPW, currently they have 102. We're asking to go to 112. Now, 9 of these are just moving the employees from the Parks and Rec into the Department of Public Works. So there's no budget effect on that. But we are asking for 1 additional employee to supervise the 9 additional employees that are getting moved there. Police did not ask for any additional employees. They currently have 104. They're asking for 104. Fire, they have 88 employees right now, and they did receive 7 new employees in 2025. And in 2026, we're keeping that number at 88, or we're requesting to keep that number at 88. Parks and Rec, in 2025, they have 48. You see they're going to drop down to 39. Again, that's just moving the 9 employees up to the Department of Public Works. And courts saying the same at 24. Total budget full-time employees for 2026 is 452. And if there were any vacancies in any department in 25, they have been budgeted for in 26. So if they're vacant, we are budgeting for those again. We have not eliminated any positions.
Larson.
Go ahead,
Thank you.
Councilor Petrus.
Would it be possible for us to learn how much in personnel expenses we avoided this year from the unfilled positions? I know that the number sort of changes throughout the year. Last year, it was helpful for me to learn that there was $9 million worth of funds that we did not expend. Would it be possible to get that number for this year? As best as we can through November. And it doesn't have to be today, but
I got it. But Mr. Chair, the councilman, we can take a look at that. That actually is a complex calculation in terms of savings because of the period of vacancy for each individual and also what the impact of that vacancy meant. So say that one of the safety forces has 8 vacancies over the course of a year. We can track by individual how long those things were vacant and how much they would have made and how much we saved on medical, but we also have to compare that to increases in overtime and impact on delivery of service. So the number in and of itself is not purely a number of savings, but we will take a look at that.
thank you.
Question.
Vice President Russell, excuse me, Councilor Maddox has a question, and I'll get to you, all right?
Yeah, I see it. Thank
Not
you.
a question, more of just a statement. Workforce is my wheelhouse as well. You're absolutely right. And I think a lot of people, our residents, miss that point that it's not apples to apples in terms of when you're losing employees, because every employee that you've lost, someone else has to fill that gap. And so for our residents who are wondering where this money is, you're actually still paying a lot of that into the existing employees that are taking up and filling up that slack. And this is a big question that was asked out in our community is where is all this money at? And just know that it has to go back in because the services still need to be provided. And so I just wanted to add a little color to that because workforce isn't simply apples to apples. Every time that you're missing an employee, you're actually expending money somewhere else to help fill in that gap, and in some cases to even recruit those employees. So you're not going to ever see that savings that you would just because they're not there. Also, the FTE and in terms of the longevity does have an impact in that based on the amount of benefits, based on how long they were there. So there are a lot of factors to play in. So if you're thinking that we missed an employee, you can't just measure from January to December to get a number based on that salary. This is just for the residents to understand that there are a lot of other factors that impact that number there. It is not simply apples to apples, one in, one out. Thank you.
Vice President Russell.
Yes, I was just wondering how many of the 452 full-time positions are newly added in 2026? Which fund is being paid out of for those new employees?
Several employees were added across several funds in 2025.
2026?
For 2026, we will give you a more detailed breakout once the departments come in for their budget hearings.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Posh.
So I just kind of want a methodology question on how you prepared the budget. So, and this was different from last year. So when you're looking at, let's pick the IT department, or no, better, let's pick police because police always has a fewer number of employees just because of they're trying to fill positions. So the budget, the numbers that we're looking at today in this budget book for police is for 104 employees. Correct? As opposed to maybe the 98 that they may have.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, that is.
We budgeted worst case scenario, assuming all the positions are going to get filled from day one.
Okay, so, but in the real world, that doesn't.
Right.
I like this approach and I think this is the approach to go, but.
We have to be conservative. So yes, we figure in that even if the position is open, that it's going to be filled come January 1, and we budget for the entire year.
Okay.
All vacancies.
That's the answer I was hoping to hear.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, proceed.
All right, this is just a breakout of the 26 personnel expenses by department. Police accounts for 27 or 28% of the city's personnel services. Fire is next. Public Works is third. Parks and Rec is fourth, and planning accounts for the fifth most personnel expenses.
Also normal?
Very normal.
All right, thank you.
Police and fire are always going to be your largest. This is a summary of the 2026 capital request. The general fund, the first line is going to be, we're asking for $220,000, very minimal, mostly just computers and software and stuff like that. Fund 402, this is the fund that is mostly general, it is general fund related capital expenses. General fund transfers money into Fund 402 to pay for these capital expenses. That's going to be $5.5 million. Now, out of all the other funds, there's going to be some offsetting revenues to help cover the cost of the capital projects. Could be grant revenues, it could be additional standalone revenues that come in to pay for capital. But the general fund, Fund 402, does not have standalone capital revenues. The only way we could fund capital projects out of Fund 402 is to transfer money out of the general fund and put it into 402. Total capital request is going to be approximately $23 million, but again, there's a lot of this has offsetting grant revenues, offsetting just operational revenues. So of the 23 million, only roughly 600,000 or 6 million is going to be fully general fund money.
Would you expect we'll get a good picture of the actual capital requests from each department, that when they are seated in front of us, that they'll be able to detail out where their monies are going to go for 2026?
Yeah, so in this book, we have a detailed breakout of where all the money's coming from. And then you could ask the department heads, you know, why they need this capital and what they plan to do with it.
Okay.
Question.
Vice President Russell.
Yes, I see that with the traffic calming, alone shows $595,000 in Fund 402 plus 20K in Fund 401. What is the measurable outcome metrics for these projects? Do you know?
I think that'll be better to ask Director Klinkscale, and she'll be able to get into that with you.
Okay, yes, definitely around children, injuries and collisions.
Okay. Now,
Okay, thank you.
Now we'll just do a quick overview of the capital, but again, you know, any detailed questions on the capital is probably best for the department heads, but we'll just go over quickly some of this.
I appreciate that. I just thought that if they're listening and they could hear it, maybe they can have those questions or answered when it's their turn. So thank you.
Sure. If you look at this page, the column on the left shows where all the funding is coming from, what accounts. Anything that begins with the 101, that's a general fund. If it begins with a 402, that's the Finance Capital Projects Fund, where the general fund transfers money in to. Any other number that's on that page that's not a 101 or 402 has offsetting grant revenues or just offsetting revenues in general for it. The IT department is requesting $865 million in capital. They have two big things. They have surveillance cameras and then the ERP system of $250,000. Community Relations is requesting $144,000. Most of this is just software and everything. The Law Department is requesting $15,000. Again, that's just software as well. The Planning Department and a lot of their capital has offsetting grant revenues. They are asking for a total of approximately $2.5 million. I do want to point out that there's the Domebrook of $500,000. That's the city's contribution for 2026. However, this in total, I believe the city has to spend approximately $2.5 million over a couple years. So $500,000 in 26, but we do already have a commitment to Domebrook where we're going to spend more money in 27 and 28.
So who will be explaining what the detail of that is?
I believe the planning could give you more detail.
All right, thank you.
Just so you know, Karen Knettle's been assigned to that.
Great, thank you.
The police capital, they're asking for approximately $500,000 in capital in 2026. Fire is asking for $243,000. The Department of Public Works, they're asking for approximately $18 million. Again, though, a lot of this money has offsetting revenues, offsetting grant revenues. So the majority of this is not general fund related money. There's offsetting revenues for this. Parks and Recreation is requesting approximately $1.2 million. And total request for capital is approximately $23 million for 2026.
How are we doing so far? Because we really should be moving along. Are there any further questions? Because that's pretty much the end of your presentation for
Yes.
the general picture, correct?
I have a question.
Vice President Russell.
Thank you. This may not be for you, Director, it may be for department. Just curious, the refuse, the parking, and sewer all show a negative change in fund balance for parking fund expenditure, 805 versus 307. Is there a plan for recovery for this?
What page are you on, please?
Oh, Lord. Okay, I just took my notes. I'll email it to you so we don't hold up the process.
Okay. Because
Thank you.
at the end of 2026, all the funds will have a positive balance.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, at the end of 2025, all the funds will have a positive balance as well. We are required to do that.
Okay, all right. I think that may answer my question, but I'll just email it to you anyway.
That'll
Okay,
be a journal entry.
Just so that I'm clear. I just don't want to hold up the process.
okay,
Because the question might not have been in the right place.
okay.
If I can?
Sure.
Okay. You're looking at the all funds page where you see that beginning balance of.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So both of those entities, the parking fund and the refuge fund, are part of the Department of Public Works, and they're doing, Councilwoman, some kind of a rates study in some of those areas. As I understand it, over a period of time, the parking revenue has become much less because you have a lot of free parking, but you still have
Yes.
expenses in those funds. And so, as I understand it from Director Clinkscale, they're examining these and also the water, sewer funds and the rates to try to see if there can be a generation of revenue that would reduce or get rid of, a negative balance operating in that fund.
Thank you so very much. You answered that question perfectly.
Okay, keep going. Ready? Now we're going to get into the departmental budgets. The first one is the Finance Department.
Page 48.
We'll have to put the page number so that we could tell.
You see? And you're right after that. Yeah, you're right after him. Finance. Yeah, page 46.
Okay, yes, thank you. We're on page 48, I believe you said, if you want to follow along. Personnel services for the 26 for the Finance Department is going to be 12.6 million. This main reason for the increase is the hospitalization. Total hospitalization for the entire city goes through this. It also goes through all the individual departments, but then we have to put it through Fund 701, which is sort of just like a wash. It goes in and goes out, but it's still under the finance purview. So the hospitalization is increasing $2 million to $10 million in 2026. That's the main reason for the increase there. And also we are requesting one additional employee in the finance for a HR director.
Excuse me. We passed the charter amendment, so that department will be separated, right? Theoretically, or it should be? Okay, thank you.
The operating expenses, we're requesting 6.9 million. You'll see an increase, and the main reason for this increase, the Leopardo debt payment that we had talked previously about. We had some debt payment fall off, but then we also have a big debt payment, and this is going to be approximately $1.5 million that we have to make in 2026. So that's, while we did have some debt fall off, we had a new debt come on, and so that's why the operating expenses increased approximately $600,000. Total finance budget is going to be just $19.5 million in 2026.
Go ahead, Councilor Cobb.
In light of our establishing an HR department, do we need to do a revision on this finance budget, pulling out the HR people that are included on here and set up a separate budget for that department?
Yes.
Okay.
HR function from finance and creating an HR department.
I would like to ask, I heard you mention the finance software earlier.
Yes,
So is that included in this department's expenses or is it elsewhere?
the IT department.
Okay. Thank you.
And just one thing, if you look at 2023, the actual expenses, you'll see there's a big spike there. I don't know if you recall, back in 2023, we issued some TIF debt for the Cedar Lee project. It wasn't really the city's debt, but we had to run it through our books. And so we had 10 million coming on and 10 million coming off. And that's the reason for the big spike in 2023 in the actual expenses there.
So it was offset.
Yes.
All right. I do have one. It's not a budget question, but it was important to us last year. Is do you have a status on when the 2023 audit will be completed and shared with council?
Yeah, the 2023 audit was completed. We did receive the draft budget, the draft audit report. I believe that might have been shared, but I can re-forward that to council. It has not been released to the public by the state of Ohio. I think they're still working their way through other audits, but it has been completed.
But they haven't formally released it though.
Correct.
So that would be important for us to see. I'm sorry, I missed that email. Yeah.
Okay. I can share what we received from ZUPCA, but it hasn't been posted to the state.
I do recall seeing that, but I'd like to have it resent. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Posh.
I'm going to need some guidance if this should go through the Finance Committee or if it's appropriate to discuss it at this time. But there's a couple things that were kind of standing. So I'm looking at the 2026 goals on page 27. And one of them is addressing our bond rating, a 5 to 10 year capital plan, the ERP replacement. I got that answer. You know, the posting of smaller contracts, a reserve policy. Is it appropriate to have a conversation about those particular items with this department, or does it make more sense to have? I guess I'm looking where. And
What specifically do you want to know?
Well,
Saying there's.
it's, well, let's just look at the capital plan for example.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of cities have a long-term capital plan.
Yes.
You know, either a 5 or a 10-year capital plan, and that's, you really plan it out as opposed to we're seeing it every single year, kind of a new capital plans. And I don't mean any disrespect. It kind of seems like seat of the pants kind of stuff. Everybody sees what they need next year and they do it, but there's really no long-term plan for it. And I know other cities have a more defined capital request process. I mean, let's use the example of police cars. I mean, 10 years, a car has a certain amount of life. Every year you're going to be, putting a particular amount of money into police cars, for example. And someone's got to plan this out. Someone's got to figure it out. It's got to be, someone has to take a lead on it. Is that something that we should be discussing in this budget process? Is it something maybe we should be discussing in the Finance Committee and how we're going to address it? I mean, I would typically want to see it in someone's goals on, some department has to take ownership of that.
Right. The city currently does not have a 5-year capital plan, but it's something we are working on and we wish to provide to council at some point in the future.
I would just say that, I've heard the interim mayor talk about this, but, obviously we're going to be making recommendations as we work through the transition. That's going to be one of them. But I like that it's formally put on the record that we need to do it. And I would expect that during this transitional period and during the budget hearings next year, I think we'll be in a different place.
I do think that there's probably one item that, needs to be escalated probably sooner than later, and that is addressing our bond rating and getting a third-party bond counsel, like an organization like Stifel, who can come in and look at the bonds, look at where we're at, negotiate with the bond rating agencies. And there's a cost associated with that, and that has to be managed. But I do believe that that needs to be on an active work plan, and that would probably come out of the finance department.
Yes.
Madam Chair, to the councilman, yes, that is something that should come out of finance. I would not invite that examination until all of the financials are current. We have completed 23, and we have the auditor's office report, which did not have major findings at all. And now we're working on closing 24, which we're hoping will happen before the end of this year, so that when you go to close 25, in 25, you'll have an audited financial statement. And then you could bring in people to examine, because they're going to be looking at that information. And if you don't have it, it won't be very, yeah.
Okay, proceed, please.
Next is the mayor's department.
We have anybody here representing that department? Page 32 for those of us using our book.
Okay, the mayor's budget for 2026 is going to be approximately $885,000. The personnel services, you're going to see a decrease there. It's going from 7 employees to 5. And again, we are just shifting 2 employees out of the mayor's department and putting them into other departments. So really, it lowers the mayor's budget, but its overall effect on the budget is going to be 0, because it's just getting moved to another department. The OTPS expenses, we're requesting $204,000. This is up from 2025. And the reason for this, we are requesting $72,000 in 2026 for a lobbyist.
Sorry. I was trying to figure out myself who the 5th employee was, and now I remember.
Okay.
Yep.
The lobbyists are for state level or?
Actually, that would be a contract. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
It'd be state level.
And if I may, I'll just say a couple of words.
Sure,
or
please
did you
do.
want to say more?
No.
I certainly am open to whatever the mayor-elect wants to do. I mean, I didn't want to, gum this up with a lot of big ideas, is, completely inappropriate. Right now, the way it works, Loretta Reeder mostly assists the city administrator, although she's kind of a jack of all trades and helps me in some degree. Josie Moore, my special assistant, very much focuses on me, which is a good thing, because I really need that attention and direction. And it seems to work out very well. I completely understand and am open to hearing, what the mayor-elect wants, and certainly the consent, if that would be the consensus of the council, I'm wide open to that. I would just add that my council intern now is interning with me in the mayor's office, and we did make that adjustment with HR. It's a small thing, but mayor-elect may want to have an intern as well. So that's another part of the puzzle.
Council
Yeah.
President
Question.
Larson.
Vice President Russell, Counselor?
No, go ahead.
All right, thank you.
I can only see it partially. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Thank you. I'd just like to share that I met with several folks at City Hall yesterday. This was one of the things that was overviewed for me. In principle, I do support this if it were something that council were willing to fund.
This is specific to a lobbyist?
Yes.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Vice President Russell, thank you.
Yes, I was asking for clarification because I didn't know if he was saying intern or lobbyist, but lobbyist would be a very good position to have. Usually a mayor would be able to go to the state level and lobby for funds and different things like that for the city. So if we don't have anyone able to do that, it would be great to be able to hire a lobbyist for the city to do those things.
Councillor Cobb.
I think it's a great idea. Is it envisioned that we would hire a lobbying firm versus an individual?
So the people that Special Assistant Moore has looked at are both individuals and firms.
Yeah, I think my preference is for a firm that has both connections in Washington, D.C. and at the State House. It is so difficult to stay abreast and informed about what's happening at our State House that has direct impact on municipalities. So I think it's well overdue that we have not had a lobbyist representing our interests, but more importantly, giving us a heads up about what the state legislature is thinking about doing.
And that person would work hand in hand with Millennium Strategies or whatever firm we hire in the capacity of grant writing and so forth.
We are a member of the National League of Cities, so they may have some information that could help you make any decisions that need to be made. That's what they're there for. So, and we pay for that membership. Vice President Russell?
I was going to recommend that same thing, Council President, and also I think it would also be good to look at an individual, because sometimes when you look at individual lobbyists, they have personal relationships with people at the state and federal level that could actually bring about a lot more interest and revenues and suggestions to the city as well.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Councillor Posh.
So regarding the mayor's budget, one of the things that I think we were trying to get accomplished last year is kind of get a set of expectations and a set of goals amongst this council, and how you would. And I was hoping during that exercise you would reach into be more of a city effort where you would come up with a kind of a big vision of where we're going to go as a city, not necessarily like a strategic plan, but maybe a strategic plan, working with council and working with the administration, those two bodies coming together and, coming up with sort of like a long-term vision of where we want to be. With the mayor-elect and the strong relationship that council, I believe, has with the administration now, it seems to me that that's a project that would be worth funding, and there would be some expense with it. I mean, you probably need to have someone coming in and mediate a conversation. Maybe it's a whole strategic plan. I mean, I think I would probably leave that in the hands of the mayor-elect and the president of council in early 2026, but it seems like we as a city need to kind of come up with a long-term vision of who we are. There probably needs to be some funding. There needs to be a goal with it. I mean, I kind of look at them, and then you have to execute on that vision. And it seems to me that I think it's okay to put a placeholder for 5 staff members in the mayor's budget. But I gotta think, if we embark upon a process where we are coming up with a vision for the city where we want to be 10 years from now, that number 5 is going to increase. I'm not suggesting that we do that now, but I think I would hope at some point in 2026, the mayor would be coming to us and saying, hey, we've come up with this great vision. We need 2 people to execute on that. So just at least in the back of our heads, realize that there may be some more money we're going to need to spend in order to sort of look at where we want to be X years from now in this city.
Anybody else? All right, we ready to proceed with the law department? All right. Director Hannah.
Top bill. Okay, the law department, the personnel services is going to be approximately $1.1 million. This number we're going to have to adjust. There was some rate changes that was done after the fact or after I was aware of. So we're going to have to increase the personnel services slightly because there were some rate changes for a couple employees. So that number will have to get tweaked just slightly, but it will be going up slightly. The operating expenses for 2026, we're requesting roughly $566,000. The budget amount for 2025, not everything rolled up right, and then there's going to be a budget amendment. So that 477,000 will be increased. So actually the operating expenses for the law department will be decreased in 2026.
So will you be sending an amended sheet for us then?
Yes, we will.
All right, thank you. Counselor Cobb.
Sure, when you mention rates, are you talking about an hourly billing rate?
We're talking about 2 employees whose hourly rates changed.
Okay. That's per the salary grades?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
How about the law director's rate? Is that staying the same?
No, there was an increase in that.
All right. And then when we need to use outside law firms, is this built into the law department's budget, or does that come out of general funds?
It's built into the law department's budget, and that's where the 566,000, it's in that number.
Okay.
It's not all that number, but it's in that number.
Right. And with respect to the number for 2025, does that look pretty close to where we'll end up the year?
No, we'll end up, like previous said, this number, the 477,000, not everything rolled into that. So that number is going to be roughly, it'll be more than it will be in 2026.
Ballpark guess?
Keep forgetting the thing. There was a rate change in the law director's contract in April that we were aware of. So the city was underpaying him and his firm from April to the end of the year. So we pulled that piece of legislation. And so we have to do some small retro. It's not significant, but it's a small retro. And then we also have some outstanding bills to the firm for work that they've done over the last year or so that's pretty specific, and we had the mayor kind of review those bills to make sure that's what we engaged them for. And that rough estimate, and Bill, you can jump in, I'm going to say that rough estimate is someplace between 125,000, maybe 150 of the firm bills, and their retro pay, Andy, maybe 30, 20 or 30, 20 or 30,000.
I would say 30,000
Yeah.
for the personnel services will be increasing. And then the OTPS, again, the budget number or the budget amendment number for 25, that 477, that number is not correct. Not everything rolled up there. So we'll get you a updated. But the good thing is in 2026, the operating expenses will be less than what they were in 2025. And the majority is hopefully using less outside firms. Correct?
I think that's right, yeah.
A follow-up question. Has anyone estimated the increased costs that the city incurred as a result of handling some of the matters? For example, the public records request that we fought to the end. Is that part of the reason for the increase?
Mr. Chair, to the councilman, yes. There are significant details on additional legal services that were required during different times of the last couple of years. Yeah.
There were actually some expenses in that OTPS line and under the legal contractual line within that for 2025 that are kind of anomalous, like the engineering fees for the STRAMP projects, those 2 projects that comprise what was the STRAMP, for some reason were paid out of the law department legal contractual budget. So that has an impact on the number that the finance director, that Andy is referring to.
Okay. At some point, and I don't need it now, but some point, I think this council would be interested in knowing things like that shouldn't have occurred and how much more additional legal expenses we incurred as a result of some of the difficulties this year.
Which is different than the engineering issue, right? Because that was really just a question of the bucket that it came from.
Vice President Russell, I know you're waiting. I'm going to ask this one question.
No problem.
Your staffing numbers, are they okay as far as you're concerned in terms of being able to handle the business of the city?
We think so. We onboarded a new assistant director of law in the last 2 weeks, and she's full-time. She's very good, and that brings us back up to a full complement post the departure that occurred earlier this year.
Right. Thank you. Vice President Russell.
Yes, I would like to appeal to the mayor-elect that maybe we consider going with a full-time law director to help minimize some of the outside costs. I think it would give the law director a full-time position. And we know with some of the things we have done over the years that it may speed up a little things, some things that we have lagged on a little bit. I did kind of put that bug in the ear of a couple of people, and some of them were favorable to that. So I would hope you would consider maybe thinking about a full-time law director. I think our city needs it with the size we have.
Thank you.
Councilor Posh.
So at the school district, and I know other cities have like a chief information officer with responsibilities of managing and logging things like public information requests and stuff. And, you know, this past year, this current year, you've had a number of those. So many so is probably hard to digest them all, which you know, I still have some open ones, but I think it's moot at this point on whether or not, you know, I feel like I even need to have them responded to.
Send that note downstairs.
Yeah, okay. Well, but does it make, I mean, you and I have had this conversation at one point, and there's really nobody that has the singular responsibility of managing, and it comes out of your department, so indirectly it's the law department. But you know, does it make sense for someone to be assigned that particular role? I mean, I'm not sure it requires a full-time hire, but someone to be given that responsibility.
Within the law department structure?
Well, I don't know where it best fits. Maybe the mayor's office or maybe comms. I don't know.
So I think that's a fair question, and it's a legitimate topic to analyze. The city has traditionally, at least for the last 10 plus years, routed all public records requests through the law department. That's not the case in every city, other than things that need to be reviewed prior to release in order to ensure that no privileged or confidential or other information that needs to be redacted is in fact redacted. We are standing up the Next Request public records portal system now. As I mentioned to the president a moment ago, we do have a full complement of assistant directors now, and in connection with the portal, we'll be recommencing the process of updating the RC2 records retention schedules throughout the city and designating so that we have current responsible custodians for each department. And I think we can tighten that up in that way and hopefully speed up the responses to public records requests. And this year was an anomaly. We had, you know, several hundred more requests than we typically do, and things did lag for a bit, particularly over the summer.
Okay. All right, we can move on, I guess. Thank you very much, Director Hanna. That wasn't too bad, was it?
Not at all.
I have city council up as the
Yep.
last one
And
for
that's the
today.
last one for today.
Page 34.
Okay, city council, your employees are saying the same at 8, but 8 full-time employees, I'm sorry. But we are adding or requesting 1 part-time employee to assist the clerk of council. And then you'll see the operating expenses of $152,000. These are going down slightly from 2025. And the reason for this, your discretionary expenses have been decreased by 40,000. And in 2025, in the budget, we had 40,000 budgeted for composting. We're moving this expense out of council's budget and putting it into the Department of Public Works.
And I do appreciate that very much.
And then you're requesting 3,700 for capital. I believe it's just computers or software.
Councilor Cobb.
Yes. So throughout the year, there are events that come up that the city is asked to sponsor. Are we setting aside money either in council's budget or in another budget to account for that? So for example, for the Music Hop, we contributed some money. For the 5K race, we contributed some money. For the PTA race, we've contributed some money. Where are we setting aside funds to do that?
I believe that's in the council's discretionary.
Okay.
And that currently is budgeted at 20,000. We did bump it up from 10 to 20.
Council President,
Vice President Russell.
is that what Councilman Cobb is talking about? Makes sense, but is that coming out of the council's budget or another fund?
Yes.
We're talking about it coming
Councilman-
out of council's budget.
Wouldn't that come out of another fund versus council's budget? I'm just curious.
Addie, do you remember how you paid for it this year?
Yeah, we did those out of council's discretionary fund that we made.
Ready.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I hear you, but I'm saying, does that make sense to come out of the council's budget versus out of maybe a general fund or a fund where we are actually giving to different districts for different events?
Like community relations, for example. Maybe
Yes.
that's a more appropriate place, I think she said.
Yes.
Oh, I'm wondering too, because we've gotten a few requests lately, if these would be more appropriately city-sponsored events that, because we're talking about putting together policy, right? To give organizations a form, an application or whatever to process so that currently the council would be making those decisions, but is there any opportunity to put that under the jurisdiction of the city so it becomes a city-sponsored event and therefore the city is actually going to be named on flyers and brochures and be given credit for that sponsorship?
I would love to answer that directly, but let me answer it this way. Between Parks and Rec and the community relations department, there's been a who should have the events coordinator, position. And now they, in a sense, they both have one. But the good news is that because part of our job, I think regardless of what budget it comes out of, part of our job is to sponsor these, to promote these events and get good attendance there. And I think, in my view, and, Mr. 1 month and 1 week in office, it seems like the community relations department is better situated to do that. It's up to council, and I'm open to hearing where these events ought to be budgeted, but I could certainly see why it would be budgeted in community relations.
Council.
Vice President Russell.
Yes, I would like to appeal to the mayor-elect that that does not come out of the council's budget, that a separate fund be dedicated to that. Also, we also talked about with people coming to the city requesting funds on different venues or whatever, that maybe a line item be put aside for a lack for a better word, like donations to like the 5K to the Music Hop to, I mean, we're getting ready to have two, hopefully merchants associations in different areas for different venues. You have something with the immigration. You have something with all these things coming up. Maybe there should be a separate pot of money where you can actually go to, maybe a process of people requesting those funds so that we have something there. And then when that money is gone, that money is gone. But I would just like to appeal to the mayor-elect to something that you can think about or digest.
Councilor Petrus.
Thank you. I agree that even though it's all city money, it seems like it would be more appropriate if it came from community relations or somewhere different like that.
So am I hearing a joint request from all of us to take that 20,000 that we've budgeted and put it elsewhere, or what am I hearing?
If I may, that 20,000 is for other things too. That's not just sponsorship though.
Okay.
I believe. So you guys do use that money for some stuff, so we don't want to take it all away.
All right.
So
I got you. Councilor Posh, I'm going to have Councilor Posh first.
Can I suggest that we have this conversation with the communications director and see what they think? Because I do think it all works together.
Councilor Cobb, that makes sense.
I would agree with that. I would say that for now, we keep this discretionary fund at $20,000.
Okay.
And then have a longer conversation with the communications director about an appropriate amount of money that would be used for city promotions of outside entities that approach us for funding.
Vice President Russell.
I agree with that. I think the 20,000 should stay in the council's account and a separate account be made for that appropriations as well.
Thank you. All right.
President. So I don't know if this should be included in the council's budget or the mayor's budget, but we've talked about replacing things like chairs in this room. I mean, is that, and I know the mayor's office is a wreck, a half. When I walked through it the other day with the meeting.
That should be capital.
I mean, where would it go? I mean, should we?
This would come, it wouldn't come out of council's budget. This would come out of the buildings and maintenance. And I believe there is money factored in already for that.
Which department would that come out of?
So it's building department, and which is now falling under DPW, so Department of Public Works.
Madam President, I do actually have one question. In our internal discussion, we had talked about potentially pulling the contract we have with Walter Drain American Legal for hosting our codified ordinances from the law department to city council. And I just wanted to know if that is reflected here or if that needs to be done at a later date.
We'll have to discuss that and get with legal if you guys want to go that route. Okay.
Madam.
Okay, Eddie, if you and I could get together on that after this.
Madam President.
Vice President Russell.
Yes, another appeal to the mayor-elect. Could you, with the interim mayor, could you definitely, as soon as possible, can you actually get some new chairs into council chambers, into the conference room for our residents as well as for council. And I would hope that would be that, I consider that an emergency measure that needs to happen immediately. I would appreciate if both of you all could get together and do that, hopefully before the end of December, because before my term is up, I would love to sit in a decent chair. Thank you.
They are working on that, Vice President Russell. They are working on it as we speak.
Yeah,
I am happy to hear that.
just to let you know, Josie Moore has actually met with some of the building and maintenance people in what is now, I mean, since they're with Parks and Rec, and we are getting estimates. So, we'll present that at the appropriate time.
Mayor, could you also have maybe some council people and some people kind of sit in those chairs to determine the comfortability of them as well? I know when you purchase office chairs, you have people actually sit in them to make sure they're just not a beautiful chair, that they're all comfortable and not strenuous to your back and all of those things. So not only just getting a decent estimate, make sure that they fit the portions of people's bodies as well.
Madam Vice President, let me urge all of you to sit in the chairs that are in the community relations department. Now I understand everybody's different, but I love those chairs. They're very comfortable, but there's some chairs that are here that you could test out right now.
And that would
Very
be
good.
What we're going to get one for Addie as well, because she's sitting on a chair that's broken.
What?
Yeah, it's not right.
Yeah, maybe we can put one of those chairs in the council chambers and all of us could get a chance to sit in it.
Josie, may I ask you, those chairs that are in the communications relations department, those would be what we would put around the table in the conference room? Because don't you still need to have a different, because we do in there now. We have rolling chairs and then we have stationary chairs that the guests sit in as along the outside of the conference room and then also in here. So I see two kinds of chairs.
We're looking at doing one large order for all of City Hall, as several departments have said that they need chairs, and the larger order you can get, then the less per chair you could pay. So right now, we're trying to turn it up numbers from all departments to find out what their needs are.
Okay. Thank you.
But yes, we probably will be looking at, the planning department also recently got new chairs, and apparently the person I'm talking to in Public Works of the buildings suggests that we take a look at those chairs because he said they're excellent.
Okay.
So we're going to be looking at the chairs that were recently purchased as a model for what we are getting moving forward for the rest of City Hall.
All right, thank you so much. Any more questions? It'll be delightful to see chairs replaced. These chairs are going to go someplace. Don't know. Any other questions about the council's budget? Vice President Russell, any more questions about the council's budget? Okay, I gotcha. All right. At this point, but you're muted, Vice President Russell.
Yes, there you go. No, I had someone come into the hotel room, so I was, no, I don't have any questions for the council budget.
All right. And I believe
Okay. I'm trying to mute again.
I believe that brings us to the end of today's budget hearings. Yes?
Yep.
Yes? All right. So gavel's going to go up, and I'm going to adjourn these hearings at this point in time. Thank you very much, everyone.